Sports 365 on this Wednesday morning. If it's a Wednesday morning, it must be a Mike Gill morning. He's giving us a little taste of both his coffee and his backyard. Looks nice out there. What are you donning for the T-shirt today, Mr. Gill?
Old Faithful, baby. Yeah. Old Faithful.
Yeah. Back to
now,
West,
what conference are they in again? Because everybody keeps changing. Are they in a new conference this year?
No, they're still in the Big 12, sadly. I'm trying to get out of there, man. Big 12 kills me. I can't do a lot of travel during the fall, so I haven't been able to go to a road game. And although they are at Penn State this year, they opened the season at Penn State.
At Penn State. Is that going to be a whiteout? Do we know?
I don't know. September 2nd, Happy Valley, and then next year the game's in Morgantown. So they play Alabama one of these years to open up the season. So there's some nice non-conference stuff, but the Big 12 schedule is tough for an alum to get to.
I just saw. I think Penn State
up against Alabama. How do you not know what year that is?
I think it's 2025. The 2024, 2025. I think they have a home and home with Alabama, or maybe it's in one of those like in Charlotte to kick off the season. One of those things.
It's early, but I don't like their odds for that one, Mike. I'm gonna go. I don't like their odds for that.
No, the football program has taken a tailspin with Neil Brown, but put out a lot of Eagles there for a while, right? They had a bunch of them in that one little draft.
You got Wendell Smallwood. We got Rasul Butler, a bunch of
Gibson.
Shelton Gibson. Shelton, the great Shelton Gibson.
Kaiser White was a Mountaineer.
Yes, he was. So was his brother, right? Both his brothers, I think, were West Virginia, but I'm not 100%. They the pipeline from Macungie to West Virginia there. Doing it well. West Virginia's been a good team over the years, but college football now it's 5 teams and everybody else. Let's be honest. Unfortunately, and that's part of the problem in my estimation.
Anthony Beck,
local
guy,
head
Anthony
coach.
Beck, the St. Louis, Battlehawks head coach. He was a Mountaineer.
Yeah, is that who he was coaching? The St. Louis Battlehawks, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
And that's the big attendance draw in the XFL. The St. Louis people trying to prove they deserve an NFL team, which they had one. But hey, if you don't sell out the Stan Kroenke, you're going to lose your NFL team. That's the moral of that story. But let's get it closer to Philadelphia, Mike Gill. 3 weeks away from the first practice now. It's list season. Jody and I were just talking about it. Ed Kratz and I are currently in the midst of our top 25 Eagles, but list all over the place. One of them I saw was our buddy Randy Mueller, who's often on the show, former NFL Executive of the Year, and he was running down the top weakness of the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's ironic because another friend of the show, Eric Edholm, was doing one of his lists and top overrated concerns, as I guess how he stressed it, and they were in diametric opposition. Eric thinks it's way overblown, the coordinator changes. Randy thinks it's a big deal. On that scale, where is Mike Gill?
That's a really good one. Man, I think the coordinator change is interesting because the last time we saw this happen in the Reed era was when they had issues, when they started plucking coaches from Andy and you didn't have that continuity on the staff. You did see a dip in this franchise in the Reed era, who, is a very good head coach, well-respected, but you can only handle so many defections from your staff before you start to, feel it. At first, look, I'm not a John Gannon hater by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think John Gannon was this horrendous guy. You're not the number 2 defense in the entire league by having a guy who's an asshat, right? He has to have some idea what he's doing. I said often on this show, every player on that defense, literally almost every single one, had their best year of their career ever last season. So I think the defensive coordinator switch is going to have some sort of impact, if not only because the defense is going to have so many different faces on that defense. So either the new coordinator won't be felt as much because he has so many new guys to kind of deal with, or he's going to go through what Gannon did the first year, where, hey, I just have a new defense. I got a bunch of new guys, and they're all learning this defense. The offensive coordinator who's been here knows the guys. I have no idea. Is he going to just install his own offense, or is he going to keep a lot of the same principles of what we've seen? I guess that remains to be seen. And if that's the case, if he just kind of keeps everything, I would imagine that the both coordinators are not as big of a deal as maybe, I guess, Randy Mueller believes they would be.
I'll tell you why I think you at least have to, going into it, believe it's a big deal. We've never seen Sirianni switch coordinators. He's only been here 2 years.
Yeah.
Had the same two guys for both years. Until you see a coach handle a transition of the guys who are in charge underneath them, you don't know.
Yeah, very fair.
We can all speculate. Oh, Nick is a guy. Is he a guy who really has his hand on the wheel, even though he's not calling plays? It's his offense. It's all about him. It's not going to change. Or is he the kind of guy who says, listen, I'm putting you in charge. I'm giving you the reign. You do it your way. We don't know. He says that he has faith in his coordinators, so we take him at his word, but we're not in those closed-door meetings, in those sessions where they're breaking down film and coming up with – we don't know yet. I think without knowing, you have to think it's a pretty big deal because we have no evidence to judge by previously. That's why I would say it's a pretty big deal.
Well, what's a bigger thought in your guys' mind? The fact that there's a new coordinator, or the fact that there's basically a completely new cast of characters on defense?
Yeah, well, that would be my concern. Offensively, because Jody knows I love Shane Steichen, tremendous respect as a play caller. But I mean, it's Nick Sirianni's offense. He's an offensive guy. They're only replacing two starters on offense, and you know, Miles Sanders and Isaac Seumalo, very good players. I'm not trying to downplay it, but they're changing 5 defensive starters, and it's not only Gannon. If you did a coaching depth chart, they lost the top 3 coaches on the defensive side: Gannon, Denard Wilson, Nick Rollis. They lost a bunch of guys from the coaching staff. So I think just the turnover alone makes it more difficult for the defensive side, plus the head coach, as he acknowledges he's involved. He wants certain things, but he's not a defensive guy. So
now, John, do you concur that when Andy started to lose coaches, not just coordinators, that had something to do with the team's downfall, or was it coinciding with lack of talent?
Well, they did a good job for a while, but yeah, once you lose as many coaches as they did, it starts to have an effect, no question about it. And talent's a big part of it as well, let's be honest. And Nick says that, show me good coaches, I'll show you good players. You can only do so much with a bad roster, but you don't even have to go back to Andy. I mean, you could argue the Eagles weren't the same after Super Bowl 52, after losing Frank Reich. A lot of people have said this, and John DiFilippo. Only one coordinator, but a very important position coach as well. They had trouble moving on from those two guys. Yeah, I think it's a bigger deal than I'm more if and I love Eric and I love Randy, but I would lean more towards Randy Mueller. I think it's a bigger deal. I don't think it's an overreaction to say. And by the way, I think the Eagles have hinted at this, Mike, by they in essence created a new layer of the coaching staff with Marcus Brady and Matt Patricia, senior offensive, senior defensive assistants. Those roles didn't exist when Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon were here. That at least makes me raise an eyebrow a little bit.
Well, if anything, it shows, I guess, in all sports, we love to blame the coach. Everybody loves the basketball coach is always the worst. There's never been a good basketball coach in the history of basketball coaches. They all stink. The manager in baseball, he's always at fault. But the football coach probably has more hand in a win-loss in a given game than any other coach. And I think the Eagles are showing the importance of coaching just in football by adding even just more guys and just saying, this is your title. We just want your mind in the building. You're not in charge of the linebackers. You're not in charge of the defensive line, the corners. We just want your defensive intuition in our room and help us out here. So I think it is definitely showing the importance of how much teams value what a coach can bring to their team.
And it's so difficult to try and judge because it's not necessarily hands-on. John and I both sit here and go, we like CEO head coaches. We like guys who manage the coaching staff rather than the hands-on play calling, play in, play out, overmanage every snap and the like. It's a talent and it's a skill into itself. And I think Nick Sirianni has flashed it pretty damn well these first 2 years.
I have one of those weird memories, and I can remember a time, I believe it was John with Krause, who JAKIB here runs the whole thing, used to host a show on our radio station. And I remember, I think it was you, John, at the time we're doing the show with Mosher. And Peterson was the coach. And I remember Krause asking almost weekly whether Peterson had too much on his plate. Should he be more of a CEO coach? And this is, of course, they're going through a 7-9 season. Well, then the next year they won the Super Bowl. So they might have been 9-7, or 7-9, and then won the Super Bowl.
7-9. No, they were 7-9, but 7-9 with a rookie quarterback who was the rookie coach quarterback 10 days before the start of week 1.
And a rookie coach. And the question, I think, to you guys, John, was, is there too much on his plate? Should he be more of a CEO coach? I think it's different for everybody. How much can you handle? Some guys, Jody, you know this probably, you work with a producer. Can they multitask? Can they answer the phones while they're editing a piece of sound? Can they get you a story? Can they do multiple things at one time? Some guys can multitask. Some guys can't. Now, you would think someone at the NFL level, once you get to that point, that you are of ability to oversee everything and do it all at one time. Maybe that's just not his skill set. Maybe it is, but I think everybody's a little different.
Yeah, see, I think it's an ego thing. If you come up on one side of the ball and you're the play caller, offense, defense, whatever, you get the head coaching position. Well, I'm not giving that up. That's me. That's my strength. That's what I do. That defines me, my ability to call plays. So they don't want to give it up when they become head coach, even though at least
I think you're both right. I think sometimes it's ego. Sometimes it's everybody's different, like Mike said. And Doug, because I talked to Doug about this a lot, he just loves it, play calling. I mean, that's his favorite part of the job.
Telling him that he loves it.
The guy's a 13-year NFL player. He didn't have an ego. He didn't. That's what I'm saying. He and by the way, he ended up giving up play calling. Just nobody knew it when he was struggling in the last year. Rick Scangarella was here and Press Taylor, and they were handling 2-minute. I think Rick had 2-minute and Press had red zone stuff. And he said, all right, we're struggling. Let's see if we could do something different. Didn't work. They just had a bunch of injuries and had a bad season. But he just loves play calling. The guy doesn't have an ego. Doug Peterson. Now, some people do. That's what I'm saying, Joe.
I don't think you can say that of anyone who's ever coached in the National Football League.
Big ego.
Anyone who gets to the level of head coach in the National Football League has an ego. Come on, John.
Everybody has a little bit of an ego, but there's levels of ego.
I guess we all look at what ego is differently, right? Yeah. We perceive someone with an ego to be a jerk off for the most part. Exactly. I don't think we looked at Doug as a jerk, but internally,
I think Andy Reid's got an ego. Does that make him a jerk? No, it makes him a two-time winning Super Bowl coach.
Right. There's a part of what everybody great as well is sometimes is that they have an ego, but they don't let their ego affect the people around them.
I probably said that wrong. Everybody has an ego. I have an ego. Jody has an ego. Mike Gill has. Everybody has some. There's a difference between the normal level of ego and the massive Josh McDaniels level ego.
Not letting your ego overtake the room.
Yeah,
and you know,
exactly. And I never got that feeling from Doug. But I say it all the time, and that includes Doug. I would prefer a CEO coach. I'm not changing that, but I just never got the thought that Doug Peterson wasn't giving up play calling because of his ego. That's all I was trying to say.
Well, I always ask the question when people are hiring a head coach, what makes whoever hires the head coach, the owner, the general manager, team president, whoever makes that decision, what makes them think because a guy is some offensive wizard that he can call a great game, that he is capable of running all 53 men? I always find that to be an oddity of, well, you're such a great play caller. You've got to be a great head coach. We have to hire you. And it's like, whoa, just because you call a good game, what do you know about defense? What do you know about running special teams? What do you know about bringing the offense and defense and the special teams together? I always find
and you know what, Mike? It's such a cliche in the NFL. I've heard it a million times. If you're hiring a scheme, you're doing it wrong. If you're hiring a scheme, you're doing it wrong. And they all hire schemes. Not everybody, but nine times 70, out of 10.
75 to 80% of that is offense. It's scheme first and offense. Dominating
that's why I said,
if you're a defensive coach, you are minimizing your chance to get a head coaching spot in the NFL with every passing year.
And that's like, you know, I guess it's more philosophy. These owners want offensive philosophies running their team, but you know, you almost want a guy who is a defensive-minded coach who goes out and finds some guy who's some offensive, creative guy because he knows his limitations on that side of the ball. You know what I'm saying? Like, instead of hiring an offensive guy who's going to probably be a play caller as well, you would almost want the defensive-minded coach so that he's out of the offense and brings in somebody who has a really smart mind on that side of the ball.
Yeah, you can do it different ways. And, you know, for instance, I mean, you know, we'll see how it works out in Miami with Mike McDaniel, and he brings in Vic Fangio. In theory, you know, Vic proved he's not a great head coach. He proved it. But he's a really good defensive mind to the point everybody wants to copy what he does. So now you have the offensive guy and the defensive guy. Let's see how it works out. Maybe it works out really well. There's a bunch of different ways you can do it and have success, as people have proven. But if you want to give me $6 billion, and please do, I'm going to hire a CEO coach if I'm buying it. That's the way I'm going to do it. You know, that's what I believe in. Doesn't make it right.
Mike Gill, haven't touched on this. We're 43 minutes in the show, and you haven't touched on the issue du jour in not only the National Football League, not only here in Philadelphia, but the entire NFL. It's just a bigger deal here in Philly than in 30 other outlets that have NFL teams. Mike Florio, Pro Football Folk.
I'm glad you got to this, Jody, because I was going to go the conspiracy route. Yeah. I think Mike Florio is tweaking Howie Roseman. That's my conspiracy.
You think it was a Howie shot, huh?
That's my conspiracy.
For those who don't know what I'm referring to, it probably happened on Friday. So all weekend was floating around and up till today. We're now like 4 or 5 days behind the story. But Mike Florio, who I'm a fan of, and I think
West Virginia guy, by the way.
That's right. WVU guy, used to come on my show. Then he became too big a deal. I can't do little Jody McDonald show anymore. But I still love his stuff and his website. Although it's gotten a little carried away and he just created a new website, which I don't understand. I hate friggin' change. You got a great way to give it. Don't go fancying it up where people have to figure out how to use your website, you idiot. But anyway, I digress.
I totally agree with the website. The whole NBC, Roto World, all of it. They ruined it.
Yeah. Well, I think those decisions are above Mike's level. I don't often defend Mike, but I'll defend him there. I think that's
well,
above
then
his head.
he sold his soul to the devil, and he's paying the price now. So I won't give Mike any slack. But anyway, he posted either Friday or Saturday, whatever it was, that the NFL has come out with a private story to explain the problem with the field in the Super Bowl this past year. That it wasn't the NFL, it wasn't the people in charge of the field, it wasn't the George Toma, the turf god or whatever his nickname is, the god of sod or whatever. It was the fact that the Eagles and the Chiefs had the wrong cleats on. That they didn't come out and test the field well enough and get the exact right cleats, even though many an Eagle changed cleats 2 or 3 times during the Super Bowl to try and find the right cleat for the slippery mess that was the field. The NFL, according to Mike Florio, the king of conspiracy, is behind closed doors for anyone who asks, have advised all of their owners, if anyone brings it up with you, tell them it was the teams, the Chiefs and the Eagles, that had the wrong cleats rather than the field was a sloppy mess on your biggest game of the year, NFL. John says he thinks it's just a complete throw in the face of Howie Roseman because those two don't necessarily.
Well, I'm partially joking. But I do think, because Howie called him a conspiracy theorist, I mean, but if I'm an Eagles fan, and I've said this, Jason Kelce, right? Who's the most popular Eagle? Jason Kelce. Get the fuck over it. I'm sorry for cursing. That's what Kelce, I was trying to bring it up. For me personally, I never want to acknowledge that somebody else or something else has control over the outcome. If I'm truly a competitor, that shit's on me. Nobody, you can't blame the San Francisco fans for whining and then turn around and whine and complain. It was a crappy field. Both teams played on the crappy field.
Right.
The Eagles outplayed the Chiefs and didn't get it done. They didn't make a play in the second half. That's it.
Well,
Turn the page.
Did this all just come up because Graham said this, I guess, with Derek and the other day?
Well, that's what Jason said.
Because it hasn't been brought. The Eagles, I think, to their credit, did a good job not saying anything about it, to the point where you're like, how could you be so tight-lipped? The field was disgraceful. Now, you could say both teams had to deal with it, but obviously the Eagles all season long, when you have 75 or 78 sacks, you lead the league by such a large margin, and then you get none. It seems that affected what happened in the game. Now, you're right. Both teams had to deal with it, and the Chiefs, for whatever reason, it seemed it affected less than the Eagles, but that would tell me that the NFL should be completely embarrassed by the product they had to put out on that field.
That's a different conversation. I'm with you there, because the NFL's too concerned about the Super Bowl show and all that halftime show and all that kind of nonsense. I'm with you there.
Yeah,
but I'm not with this. Woe is the Eagles because the field was crappy, and that's why I point to Jason Kelce. And everybody who takes it his way, which Jalen Hurts as well. I mean, everybody, if you're playing the NFC Championship game in Green Bay, right, you got to deal with it. You got to deal. They build that field. They build that for the Green Bay Packers, not anybody else. So if they get the number 1 seed and it's crappy weather, hey, deal with it. Or lose the game. It's the same thing. Was it the most positive feel for the Philadelphia Eagles compared to the Kansas City Chiefs? Probably not, because the Eagles' strength is not exactly matched up with the crappy field.
The only caveat to that would be you're playing on their field because they earned it. You're supposed to be on a neutral site, so these things should be neutralized so that it shouldn't affect.
Yeah, but then you get down into the weeds of. We'll bring up another Kevin Kincaid, friend of the show, another West Virginia guy. I saw Kevin. We got to get Kevin on because Kevin and I usually agree on most things. We disagree on this. He was talking about George Toma alerting the Kansas City Chiefs. The guy's 94 stinking years old. You think Andy Reid's taking a phone call from George Toma? Oh, Andy, here's your big advantage.
Not a bad one. It's not a bad theory.
I cannot. I can't get it. And this is where Mike Floyd, I can't get into these stupid conspiracy theories. I can't. Did it help the Chiefs? Yes. That's different than a conspiracy.
Toma done the field in previous Chiefs Super Bowls? Do they have some sort of relationship?
Yeah, he used to work for him, I guess.
Oh, there you go.
Well, that's I mean, that's like back in the days where, Chip Kelly used to talk about this when people would come into and talk about things like sports science, and those old school coaches say, "Get out of my office." I don't agree with that, and Chip's like, if your answer is we do it this way because we've always done it this way, it's wrong. Mm-hmm. You should listen to people. I'm all on board with that. The conspiracy stuff, and that's why I bring up Mike Florio. It helped the Chiefs because the Chiefs weren't built the same way as the Eagles. Okay, you got to overcome it, and they did for the most part. They were very competitive. They were in the game. They had the best player on the field. It was 38-35. Both defenses couldn't stop anybody. And the only difference between, and this is something Kevin and I agree on, the only difference between Super Bowl 52 and Super Bowl 57, the Eagles made a defensive play. In 52, they didn't in 57. That's the only difference.
By the way, in that game, if there was more of an advantage for the Chiefs than the Eagles, because the Eagles speed rushers, you're trying to put a number on it. Over some period of time, you got to be able to figure out and adjust. And I'm not saying maybe the field keeps you from being able to be 100%, but the Eagles lost the second half. So if you want to say that there was an imbalance in who it affected more, well, it should have affected everybody less in the second half. And in the second half, the Chiefs were actually the better team. That's why they went ahead and ran the game.
Yeah, by the way, Jody, you bring up a good point. What the hell happened in the first half when the Eagles didn't have the right cleats on? They beat the brakes off them. And if it wasn't for the fumble, the game would have been over. And they still had the same crappy cleats on, and they beat the you-know-what out of the Kansas City Chiefs. It doesn't make any sense at any level. Except the conspiracy theory.
So Mike, John thinks it's because he's trying to pimp Howie Roseman. Why does Florio even go there? Do you think he created this thing out of whole cloth? That he got a whisper somebody in the league that I heard this guy tell a league owner because a league owner asked about this. Why does this even come up at this? We're in July. We're getting ready to open up camps. We're now 6 months, for at least 4 months, 5 months removed from the Super Bowl. Why does this become a thing? Why does Florio go there?
I literally, again, I go back to when Graham said something the first time I've heard, and then I guess Chauncey Gardner followed it up and agreed with him to some extent.
Yeah, so Chauncey did, yeah.
In the middle of the summer where, we're at the time, you're like 4 weeks from camp. Hey, he just said this. I'm gonna, throw it out there that, the field wasn't on the league. It was on you, buddy, who's talking about the offensive line is lucky that field was a mess. Well, no, if you would have put the right cleats on, maybe he would have had a different outcome in the game. It's just a bizarre situation. I can't even believe in July, 3 weeks from camp, that you're right. This is all resurfaced because it's a horrible memory. It's one of the worst. I mean, you think back to the game and you don't want to talk about it because we're all like, well, everybody played on the field. But the fact that the game has that caveat to it in the background, it really sucks for that game. For both sides.
Well, that I agree with. The NFL should be ashamed of themselves. They got to do a better job. And if it's going to come down to that, just have it indoor facilities. I mean, if you can't figure it out.
They did have an indoor facility.
Yeah,
they chose not to use it.
Well, that's indoor-outdoor. But, it's not the same as the conventional dome.
Well,
where you have
the fact is this. If somebody in the league said, let me go to Mike Florio and try to get this message out there, I don't know. Is Mike Florio the biggest name in that in that field.
I'm telling you, Howie called him the conspiracy theorist, and now he's trying to tweak Howie.
So that's what I'm saying. The league goes to him because they know that something so preposterous would fly through him. In other words, if I put this out through Ann Rappaport, it's not going to be believable. If I put this out through Adam Schefter, it's not going to be believable.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
Well, in the NFL, to be fair to Mike, the NFL is, they want to cover their own crap ass and say, oh, we didn't make a mistake. The NFL made a huge mistake with the field.
Right. But it was 4 months forgotten. Why pardon the pun, why unearthed it again at this time? No, don't do that. Why?
I go back to, I think, Graham bringing it back up.
Yeah, Brandon did bring it up.
Yeah,
he
did. My producer.
I think that's more of a Philly thing than a national thing. Did that get national attention, Brandon Graham's quote, or a lot more?
A little bit, I think.
No,
that I don't know.
Yeah, I think that was more of a Philly thing. All right, Mike Gill, I take it you didn't make it over to CIO at all last week, did you?
No, but I saw plenty of the pictures. My old producer, James Seltzer, there got his ass whipped by Jason Kelce. I did see that. It looked like a great event. I heard they did like $150,000 before the doors even.
Oh, they're at like $400,000 now.
Well, I'm saying before the doors even opened, they did 150. He's got something going there, man. And you mentioned it, John. You think about this. I was off on, I guess, Monday, and my producer was filling in for me, and I was in the car at 4:00 when we do football at 4, and they were talking about, lists ranking the fan bases or something in Philadelphia. I said, how many different sports football fan bases can name the center on their team, let alone him being the most popular guy on the team? How about the backup center? I mean, people here, Jody, you know this. I mean, I go back to when I interned for you guys, and people would talk about, well, who's going to be the backup center? Who's going to be the second string guard?
Yeah.
What fan bases are having that conversation? It is, and it's just so apropos that Jason Kelce would be the most popular Eagle on a team that went to the Super Bowl a year ago and won a Super Bowl. It is so apropos, and he fills the role just perfectly.
He does.
That's a Kelce thing more than an Eagle fan thing. The guy's he's a guy who flat out gets it and knows how to be part of the community. And I just think he's that good a dude. And we are so lucky to have him as the center of the Eagles and the face of the franchise for a very long period of time. Mike Gill,
real quick, Jody. How many offensive linemen can embrace that role and perfect it? Some of them are just, they don't like it. They don't want to talk. They want to be behind. Now, you get every rare one that wants to be the ham, but they're a ham and they don't handle it right. He handles it to perfection. He handles that role and hits it out of the park.
Doesn't matter what position he plays. We know he plays center, but he's got that kind of personality. He's got that kind of mindset. That's why.
And by the way, the Eagles got 3 of them. They got Lane and Jordan, who got the personalities to handle it. Not to Kelce's level, but they offensive linemen, not only are they good, but man,
is Mailata going to start taking over for the sensational Soul Cruisers or what, man?
Yeah, that dude is a Pro Bowl. That's what I tweeted. He is a Pro Bowl level left tackle, and he missed his calling because he's a better singer than he is a left tackle. He is, and for people that saw, Jordan got married over the weekend, I guess, in Maui, and clip of him singing, unbelievable.
Yeah, well, I saw the clip and the sensational Soul Cruises are big down the Jersey Shore this time. They were down at Kix McNutley's on over the weekend.
McNutley's.
There you go.
That sounds like a.
I went down to I saw Colin Thompson Sunday. I went to his celebration.
Nice.
Down in Cape May.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And who I ran into was Matt Rule was in attendance.
Really?
Nice.
He was. Terry Bradway, the former Jets GM, was in the house. So it was a nice little party for Colin, who's in town for the week.
Very nice. Matt Rule going to have to get on a big old jet plane and get out to Nebraska pretty damn soon. Good to see he's still got his roots here on the East Coast. Mr. Gill, thank you very much. We always love Wednesdays when you jump aboard. We'll do it
At
again
Mike Gill
show.
Very popular with the listeners, Mike. I used to get a big ego. We were talking about ego because I was very popular on Mike's show. Now Mike's very popular on my show. It all comes around 180.
Still are, John.
Thanks much, buddy. Looking forward to seeing what t-shirt you have on next week. That's Mike Gill here with us on Birds 365. All right, Johnny Mac, Birds 365. We still got an hour left to go. We got a good hour because Rob Marty's going to join us in about 20 minutes. So stay right here on Birds 365.